we've all seen the videos of people listening to a Taylor Swift song and then dissolving into a mess of tears. And very often, because the people involved are young women and girls, the comments are littered with people disparaging them for having such a strong emotional reaction and encouraging them to go touch grass and other statements of dismissal. And to be quite frank, I personally find a lot of it quite cruel, and I'm hoping that if I give a little bit more perspective, a little bit more context on things, that maybe it will be something that it is a little bit more understood, and then people can be a little bit more compassionate towards others. So I personally am somebody who uses music for both emotional catharsis and also for sensory stemming, and a lot of people are. I know a lot of my friends are, at least. And while I must say it's definitely very common among neurodivergent people, I don't necessarily know that it's exclusive to us. Anecdotally, it seems particularly common in people that have CPTSD or people who had experienced childhood harm. And I think a lot of that suppressed emotion regarding our past is one of the big things that leads to it, but I don't think that this is exclusively the case. And if you're somebody who is like, well, you know what, I cry to Taylor Swift songs, but none of this describes me, let me know in the comments. What is your experience, and what do you think makes you cry when you listen to a Taylor Swift song? Editing Aaron jumping in for a minute here. So I know that there's obviously things that are related to the actual music itself, like major keys make you feel a certain way and minor keys make you feel a certain way, but that's true of all music, and I'm more interested in focus on what specifically is different about Taylor Swift's music, or what is specifically evocative about Taylor Swift's music. So I'm not going to be focusing much on that kind of stuff in this video, mostly because I'm not an expert in that. I really can't speak to that, but if you are somebody who can speak to that, please let us know in the comments. So first off, I think there's two primary sides. There's like the compartmentalized things in the past that come up when you listen to a new Taylor Swift song, and then also I think there's a secondary level that gets applied to songs that we have listened to a lot, where you cry to them even on subsequent listens. So I've discussed this a lot before, especially in my video about TTBD and how it is like emotional catharsis in an album, but a lot of people, especially a lot of women, have what I call grief that can't be spoken. Things that are inherent to the experience of being a woman or being perceived feminine, that because they are common, we often don't necessarily have the space to grieve ourselves, to feel the emotionality about it. We are encouraged to just grin and bear it. And especially with women, a lot of times we find that if we express our emotionality in the moment, we are labeled as being irrational. People ask us if we have our period, if we get too emotional about something. So often when we're in a bad situation and something traumatic is happening to us, even though we know at the moment that it's traumatic, we're still suppressing that down. But on another level than that, I think there are so many things that a lot of people don't even necessarily realize is traumatic. So even though they've experienced a lot of it in their life, it's just normal. It's what they think of as normal. I've said this a lot before, where like, if you grow up within toxicity, the only thing that feels like home is toxicity. And that's how a lot of people end up in bad relationship after bad relationship after bad relationship. But often they don't necessarily realize in the moment that it is a bad relationship. But furthermore, a lot of us need time to process, especially, like I said, neurodivergence. For me, I need to get out of a situation before I can process the emotions around it. So a lot of times in my relationships, I thought they were totally good until the very last minute when I got out of it. And then I was like, wait a minute, now that I have the time to process this, this is not okay. But a lot of us, for a wide variety of reasons, have a lot of these very deeply compartmentalized feelings that we have not been allowed to express. And I know that there are going to be people down in the comments that are like, oh, just grin and bear it. I can't believe you think that you need to cry about everything. To which I say, oh my God, you clearly have a lot of trauma, and instead of feeling your sad emotions, you're lashing out at others who are able to feel their sad emotions and treating it as cringe. And a lot of Taylor's fans grew up under very strict religious structures, right? I went to Catholic school. A lot of women that I know were fundamentalist Christians when they listened to Taylor, and like, they endured all of the purity culture, the slut shaming, things like that. And in those structures, women were even more discouraged from expressing how they felt about things, or from realizing that the things that are happening to them are not appropriate and shouldn't be happening to them, and that they don't deserve those things that happen to them. But the big theme that unites it all is that our emotions were suppressed and silenced and compartmentalized away, and a lot of us have either forgotten they exist or never realized that they were problematic in the first place. So even when we're talking to a therapist, we don't have the ability to say, hey, there's this compartment over here and it's just filled with bullcrap that's making me sad. And because of our mind-body connection, the body keeps score, right? It doesn't matter if you acknowledge that the things that happened to you were traumatic or not. Eventually, you are going to have the long-term physical and mental health effects of suppressing all of those things. Like, that is why I think you have so many men that they, you know, work until they retire, and then like 2 days later they have a heart attack because they've just been suppressing all of their feelings down and never emoting or anything like that. I don't think as a culture we express our emotions enough, especially those negative emotions. But those emotions need to get out or they're going to be trapped in us forever. And Taylor's music really is the key to opening those compartments. I do think that one of the reasons that people can be so harsh when they see us crying about Taylor's music is because they have the impression that her music is just about her life and her breakups and things like that. But in reality, Taylor has discussed a wide variety of issues that impact many women and non-women alike in our society. Sure, relationships and breakups are part of that, but also being perceived, body images. She has a song about losing a child, and she has songs that fans perceive through a lens of miscarriage as well. There are a lot of themes within her music that are about showbiz, the fame industry, what happened to her when she was young and how that's impacted her whole life. There are so many other themes, and I do think that one of the reasons that people are so dismissive of that is because admitting her music is about other things is admitting that the world has all of these other problems, very many of which impact women disproportionately, that Taylor sings about and that Taylor unites people about. And like I said, Taylor is like having somebody come over to where you're hoarding all of your emotions and being like, hey, I see that you've got all of these compartments. Let's work these out. Let's get these emotions felt. Let's get these emotions out of your system. Let's acknowledge these things so that we can move on and we can start to process and start to grow more. Because that's one of the biggest problems about people that had a traumatic childhood. Like, a lot of us feel like, to some degree, parts or all of us are arrested in a previous state. And one of the things that was big for me is when I started really listening to Taylor's music, especially All Too Well 10-minute version, it really allowed me to finally cry about all of those age gap relationships that I knew on some level were not right for me, were not healthy for me, but because society treated those relationships as normal. Nobody really questioned us in the moment about those relationships. And if they did question us, it was just in the, oh, that's funny, you dog, you're robbing the cradle. It was in a way that was vaguely approval, at least vaguely approving towards the male in the relationship. But realizing that these things not only can cause harm, but also that somebody who is as rich and as talented and as smart and has the perspective that Taylor does can end up in the similar or same situations to us. And that is so emotionally validating, especially when many of us have experienced a lot of gaslighting in the few times that we have attempted to come forward and say we have a problem and say that we need help and say that we have all of these bad things that happened in our past. Often we are treated like we are crazy. Like look at everything that's going on with Tana Mojo right now and the Cody Co allegations. Like, everybody just wants to dismiss Tana because, like, oh, that's just crazy Tana. And no one's actually looking at the situation and being like, maybe the reason that Tana is the way that she is stems from the things that she is alleging happened to her as a child, stemmed from people putting her in situations that a child was not meant to be in, stemmed from not having somebody around to be like, hey, these figures are predatory and they are taking advantage of your fame and like pushing you to do things that you probably shouldn't be experiencing, not at your age, but definitely not at her age in front of a huge audience. Like, when she was doing a lot of these videos with Cody Co and Shane and everything like that, millions of people were seeing all of these things that she was going through. And on so many different levels, all of these emotions that people have let out by songs are not really about the song itself per se, but it is about the part of ourself that that song brings into the light and allows us to address and allows us to realize, hey, this was bad, this shouldn't have happened to me, it wasn't my fault, I was just a kid, or I was in a position where I didn't have a lot of power, and to start really healing from that, to know what things that we need to talk about to our therapists about, to have the words to speak of them, because a lot of us do verbally process. Like, a lot of people do need to talk about their issues or write their issues out on paper in order to really see them full big picture. I'm one of those people. If I don't talk to somebody about my issues, or if I don't journal, I get my perspective so skewed, it's not even funny. But just because you verbal process and just because you're good with words doesn't necessarily mean you are good with identifying your emotions and putting words to them. Very often in my life, even though I'm extraordinarily good at putting words to other people's feelings, I have needed song lyrics to be able to put into words the emotions that I felt about specific circumstances. Like, especially, like I said, the age gap relationships and what happened to me at Catholic school, it wasn't until I had songs about those sort of things that I had the words to express how I felt and how it hurt me and all of the problems that had come up in my life because of those incidents, and be able to go to my therapist and say that this is what's wrong and be able to get concrete steps about how to fix it. So often it has been song lyrics that have taken my therapy and my healing forward hugely because it has given me the words to express things that are wrong and the validation that they were wrong in the first place. Before we discuss the second layer, I'm Erin Moriarty, and among other things, I discuss Taylor from a muse-free or Taylor as her own muse perspective. I focus on literary and film references, fame and media culture references, and things of that nature primarily. I'm also very interested in Taylor Swift as a performance artist. I also talk about lifestyle as somebody who is neurodivergent, medically retired, and has EDS, along with a lot of other things. For most of my life, I prioritized hustle culture and making myself appealing to men because I thought it would help me get ahead in life, and what I actually found was that it made me insane because it made me deny who I actually was at heart. And I do commentary from that perspective, especially commentary about figures that hurt women and children, or structures that hurt women and children. Now, the second layer that comes in with songs that have been out for a while is the way that Taylor's music impacts us and the connections that Taylor's music allows us to make. Like, I have made so many friends who get me and who I don't need to fake it and who I don't need to pretend to be somebody else through Taylor's music because we all relate very similarly to her music. And in the past, I felt that a lot of my friendships had to be fake. I had to put on a facade for those people to accept me. And finding Swifties and actually connecting to them through her music and like singing along to her songs and things like that, that has been really big as a part of my healing, but also as a part of my social development as a neurodivergent person. Like, when I think about Love Story, I think about when I was younger and how me and my friends would run around Maryland Renfest in our princess dress singing, "Romeo, save me! Romeo, take me somewhere we can be alone," you know? That was a very integral part of our younger years, and so when we hear those songs as like surprise songs or what have you, we are not only having like that emotional catharsis that we initially had with the song, but we're also having like all of the social connections and bonds and associations that we have made with those songs over the years. When I asked a bunch of my friends about this topic, one of the things that a couple of people said was that they had had playlists before that had Taylor's songs on them that they listened to with relatives who have now passed on. And because they have those playlists and they listen to those playlists so much with those people, they always are thinking and reminiscing back to those people, and it was a good way to connect back to those memories, which, you know, the longer somebody has passed, the harder it can be to reconnect with those memories. But sound is one of the things that really can help connect us back to our past and to our memories and things of that nature. And I think that's such an important aspect of Taylor's work, but also why the community around her has so much fervor. Like, I think in a lot of realms, it is a lot of people who felt misunderstood, felt dismissed, felt gaslit, felt like people didn't see their problems as problems until they came forward into Taylor Swift's work and made connections with other people who felt the same way and had experienced the same things. I think it's so fun. I don't honestly know that I would be currently in the mental health state that I was if it wasn't for Taylor Swift's work. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not doing amazing right now. I'm never doing like amazing. That's just a burden of being me. There are always going to be a lot of things that I'm going through as a disabled person and, you know, having all of those burdens. But I am mentally and emotionally and socially in a better position than I've been in for a while because I've finally made connections with people who are interested in the same things that I'm interested in, who like talking about the same things that I like talking about. And I have had this in the past with things like Star Trek and what have you, but those haven't quite hit me the same way. And I do think part of that is because a lot of men were involved in the creation of Star Trek and, you know, what have you, but that's a topic for another story. And as Taylor said one night at Eras Tour, like, these songs start out as being about her relationships, the things that she went through in her life, but the more that we listen to them and the more that we experience them, they become less and less about Taylor and more about us and the people in our lives. And I think that's just so beautiful, and I think that's one of the things that I like the most about the fandom. Ultimately, we are all the product of our experiences, and experiencing Taylor's music shapes us all in a very unique way. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Is this something that you can relate to? Is it something you can't relate to? Is it something that you're at least understanding more about now that you've seen this video? Please let me know. If you are new here, I am at sub 2,000 subscribers, so it really does help me out to like, comment, and subscribe. And please check out some of my other videos. I think you'll like them.